All right. Well, good morning. All right. If you are ever attacked by clowns, go for the juggler. They complain when I don't tell a joke. They groan when I do. Send me material, okay? I'll handle the spiritual stuff. You be in charge of the shtick, okay? We have traveled a lot of miles since last week, haven't we? Boy, what a journey it has been. So we are talking about Don Miguel Ruiz's work, The Four Agreements. This is Toltec wisdom that hails from southern Mexico. This wisdom is thousands of years old. Don Miguel Ruiz released this book more than 20 years ago, but since the wisdom is thousands of years old, it's still relevant. We make a lot of agreements in life around the way life is, around the way people are, around what we think about ourselves. The most important agreements are the ones that we make with ourselves, though. Our agreements actually rule our lives. It's like they're unwritten personal laws that are always in operation for us. So these four agreements help us to break our connection to the agreements that we have that have come from fear. So last week, we talked about being impeccable with your word, that your word is the power you and I have to create. Our word manifests everything. Our word is like a force in the universe, and it's the most powerful tool we have. That with our word, we can create good. In fact, we can actually create heaven in our life through the power of our word, especially if our word is life-affirming and constructive. But by the same token, we can also create hell, a living hell, by our word being not constructive and not affirming. And I suggest that we've perhaps all done a little of both, maybe more one than the other. Now, Jesus said, "It's done unto you as you believe." And so impeccable has to do with the right use of really our energy. Being impeccable has to do with how we put our energy out into the world. Are we putting our energy out in the direction of truth and love because that's the ideal target? Are we putting our energy out in such a way that we cause no harm, no suffering? Are we putting our energy out in such a way that we lift other people up rather than tear them down? Are we putting our energy out in such a way that people feel better about who they are because we cross their path rather than they feel worse about themselves because they know us? All right, so you measure your impeccability of your word by the level of self-love you have for you. That was last week. Now you're up to speed if you weren't here. Or if you dozed. It's okay. Agreement number 2. I really like this. Don't take anything personally. I don't know about you, but people I know really well have a tendency to take everything personally. Like if it rains, it's personal. God sent it to ruin their day. Do you know these people? If they don't get the green light, oh my God, the universe is conspiring against me. This is why Science of Mind has been so helpful for me personally, because I am an inverse paranoid. I think the universe is always conspiring to do me good. Yeah, behind my back all the time. I believe the universe is trying to do me good. And so this is why I can say don't take anything personally. Don't take it personally. Right? If you walk down Ventura Boulevard, imagine this. You were walking down Ventura Boulevard, and there is a person there that you don't know from Adam. You've never met them. Maybe they're a street person, or maybe they're just somebody there with a nice little aluminum colander on their head, and they've got some tinfoil antennas, or just a person, just the normal kind of person you might see on Ventura Boulevard, right? And just suppose they start to scream obscenities at you, or they say that you're crazy, and in fact, you're the devil. Yes, you are. and the mothership will be here any minute, right? You would know that that really has nothing to do with you, wouldn't you? Because it's so extreme, and you don't really have any close connection to the colander head person, right? You're not like best friends with them or anything like that, that you wouldn't like take that in and go, oh, I've got to go home now. I better lay down for a while. I can't believe they said that to me. I'm so hurt. I'm devastated. I may not be able to go to work for the rest of the week. I don't know. I'm feeling fluish. Gosh, how is this happening to me? I mean, how did they know it? You would just let it roll off your back, right? Now, I know. But we are such a tricky people that we think, but what if they really do know something about me? What if they are actually saying something about me? So in the first land-based people on each continent, the indigenous people, what they all believed was that if something comes to you 3 times, then you should pay attention. So if one person says something that seems particularly critical to you, and this is really what we're talking about today, you could probably let that go. Honestly, you could let that go. It's probably more about them than it is about you. But if somebody else in your life, this is just an aside, this is a little freebie here, this is not the talk, but this is just an aside. If another person who is a credible person comes and tells you the same thing, you might make a little note of that. Not a big note, but just like a little jot. Like, okay, consider this later, possibly. If a third person comes into your life and tells you the same thing, what these indigenous cultures tell us is, you need to pay attention to that because there's something there for you. They're not saying you're a terrible person, you're not lovable, you're not good, you're not a child of God, you're not worthwhile. They're not saying any of that. They're just saying there's something there for you to look at. But now back to what we're talking about, not taking things personally. If you take something somebody says personally, it's because on some level you agree with them, right? And you think it's actually true about you, right? That's why it has such an effect on you. But in the science of mind, we teach that only what God created about you is true. And what God created is the good, the beautiful, the loving, the perfect. That's what's true about you. So taking it personally really is like the maximum expression of selfishness because we really think that that everything is all about me, right? So we learn to take it personally, I think, when we're growing up, right? When we're being educated, when we're being domesticated and prepared for society, that we think we're responsible somehow for everything. Don't you remember that as a little kid, that at some point, you started to think, I'm responsible for everything. If mommy and dad had harsh words, it must have been something to do with you. If the teacher was in a bad mood in first grade, it must have been something to do with you. If it rained, it must have been something to do with you, right? So we think we're the center of the universe. Now, nothing other people do is because of you. It is, in fact, because of them. Really, it is because of them. That insult that came your way has nothing to do with you. If you take it, though, it's like drinking poison. Don't take the poison. Don't take the poison. How often have people said, don't take the poison, and we think, well, maybe just a taste. If I could just taste it a little bit, Their point of view comes from their programming, their history, their current state of consciousness, where they are, what they've been through. It's about them. You can be immune to poison in the midst of hell. Wow, I think that's great. I think that's just the most phenomenal thing. Eleanor Roosevelt said, nobody can make you feel bad about yourself without your consent. Without your consent. So people could say crazy, outlandish things to you, but if you don't consent, there's no problem. It's always interesting to me how willing people are to concede. Like, oh, you must be the new authority in my life. Oh. Like, what is that? What is that? Think about it. How often have you felt offended or the need to defend? right? Or the need to create conflict in response to something somebody says or does, or the need to be right. I love A Course in Miracles. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, would you rather be right or happy? And I know we want to be both, right? I do. I say yes, both. No, would you rather be right or happy? Yes, both, please. Sign me up for both. If I'm right, then I will be happy, right? But it doesn't work that way. See, it's not important to me what you think about me. Do you remember years ago, Terry Cole Whitaker, her first book was What You Think of Me Is None of My Business? That principle has never changed. It's still true today. What you think, what other people think of you, is really none of your business. And so, therefore, we don't have to take what people think personally. How is that possible? You know who you are. When you know who you are, when you know what you're here to do, what you're here to express, what you're here to give into life, you know who you are. People say, oh, you said this and it hurt me. Well, first of all, I would say we're on a spiritual path. And we have enough awareness to know we don't get up in the morning and say, what can I do today to cause some suffering in the world? That's not who we are, right? So we're not intentionally trying to create any kind of hurtful energy in the universe, right? In Ephesians, in the Bible, it says, be ye kind. Really good advice, I think. Be ye kind. Just be nice. How many times have I yelled that in my living room? Can't you just be nice? Be ye kind. Don't you people read the Bible? That's just me and the TV. There's anybody else there. It's just me yelling at the TV. But if people do get hurt, you got to check in with yourself and say, was there anything in me that was intentionally trying to be hurtful or diminishing? You know, because the big picture is they probably have wounds, and what you've done is you've lit up their wounds. Another way to say it is they had buttons and you pressed their buttons. So, you know, we all see the world differently. We all bring something different to the seeing. And that's where I think it gets really interesting, is that we bring something to the seeing. You know, they talk about that example that if there are 4 people on 4 different corners and they witnessed an accident, they would all describe it completely differently. They would all describe it completely differently. I know in my family growing up, I have an older brother and an older sister, and we can talk about very specific events. Very specific events, and we'll all agree the event happened, but then we all have our own complete spin on it. You know, do you remember that Easter? No, it wasn't Easter, it was Christmas. You're crazy, it was Thanksgiving. You know, and so other than the fact that, you know, the event happened, the asteroid hit, or whatever it was, we don't remember any of it the same at all. The house was full. There were 30 people there for Sunday dinner. No, we were all alone. What are you talking about? You know, oh my God, the dogs were wild in the backyard. We didn't have dogs when this happened. We can't agree on absolutely any of it. So I know we all bring something of our own, something that's uniquely us, to all of the seeing. So another way to say this is like we create the entire movie. We're the writer and the director and the producer, and you're also the star. You're the star actor. Everybody else who's in the movie, all of those other people who show up in your life, they're just supporting roles, right? They're just there to support what's going on in here for you. So the way you see that movie is according to the agreements that you have made in life, right? So imagine if we took nothing personally. Could you just imagine that with me for a second? That we're just for today, not going to take anything personally. There'd be nothing to be angry about. There would be no envy. There would be no jealousy. Probably be no sadness at all if we didn't take anything personally. See, the opinions you have about yourself are not necessarily true, are they? Not true in the God sense of truth, right? Therefore, you don't need to take all that chatter in your mind personally either. So it's not just what goes on in the world out here. Because I don't know about you, but I've said some horrible things to myself over and over again. And you know, if you say something to yourself long enough, you'll start to believe it. And I think that's a huge disservice we do to ourselves. So why listen to that smack in your head when you could hear what? You could hear the voice of God. You could hear the still small voice. You could receive information from other higher realms that would lift you up. You know, if you take things personally, here's the bottom line. If you take things personally, you're setting yourself up for suffering. You know? And don't you think there's enough suffering in the world right now? I mean, haven't you suffered enough? I feel like we have. I talked to a lot of people in the course of a week, and people have really suffered a lot. And I don't think that, you know, taking it personally is worth it because you're just going to have more suffering in your life. You know, sometimes people are actually addicted to suffering. It's crazy to me. But, you know, if you trust yourself, and how do you trust yourself? Well, it's easier if you have an inner life. So here's what I know about the taking things personally thing. Is that if I've prayed and I've meditated as much as I like to, if I've done my studying and I've done all my spiritual practice, people can say whatever they say, and I don't take it very personally. But if my tank is running on empty, you know what I mean? I'm stretched really thin, I'm really tired, I just want to go home and pull the electric blanket up and turn it all the way to mother, you know? If I'm in that place, then I'm like a big target looking for offense, looking to take everything personally. My God, I can't believe it. Ralph's didn't have any boneless, skinless chicken breasts. They must have seen me coming. How could they do this to me? So for me, I think the trick is if I'm prayed up, if I've done my inner work, if my tank is full, then I don't take things personally. People could say something wonderful, and it's like, okay, thanks. And people could say something not so wonderful, and it's like, okay, thanks. But none of it's going to ruin me. None of it's going to crush me or devastate me because I've taken that time to go within. I've prayed, I've meditated, I've cultivated my inner life, you know? And that's where, I know that's where the good comes from. Look, people aren't bad. They're doing the best they can. You know, everyone's trying to get their needs met to the best of their ability with the skills they have right now, right? So in Science of Mind, we're always talking about how important it is to see through the appearance to God within. That, yep, God's in there, and we think, really? There? It's like, yep, God is even there. So people can do what they do, and it doesn't have to hurt you. You don't have to take it so personally. You don't have to take it in, you know? We don't have to put our trust in that because we put our trust in us, right? So to not take things personally, I think immediately reduces suffering. And I think that right there is absolutely enough of a reason why to not take things personally. That you and I, you're responsible for you. You're big now, right? You're big. Yeah, you dressed yourself this morning and everything, right? So you can take responsibility for you. And with this agreement, Don Miguel Ruiz is saying, you know, you can go anywhere, you know, with your heart wide open, and no one can hurt you, right? Because you can love without fear of ridicule or rejection, and you can ask for what you need. This is an interesting thing. People will sometimes ask for what they need, and sometimes someone will respond and say, no. Now, you know, I've never been good with no. It's not my strong suit. I think no means the negotiations are now open, is what I think. You know? So when people say no, it's like, okay, well, how about this? Well, no. Well, what about that? Well, what if we did this and this and this? And a little of that. And usually people I kind of go, well, okay, maybe. I was like, oh, maybe. Maybe is a lot closer than no, isn't it? Right? So when people say no, like, no. I think it's okay to ask for what you need, you know? And when we don't take everything personally, it's really easy for us to follow our heart. And I believe that the way God speaks to us is mostly through our heart. Let's pray. So we turn our attention inward now, grateful to be together this morning, knowing that we are all connected in the mind and in the heart that is God. I know that God that is everywhere equally present is the love and intelligence that creates the universe out of itself, and that same love and intelligence created every one of us. We are emanations of divine consciousness. And so I speak the word for us today that we're open to this agreement of not taking everything so personally. That what other people do says more about them than it does about us. And so because we know who we are, that we are expressions of God, here with a gift to give, then we're on track. And we don't have to take any of that other stuff in. We're not allowing ourselves to be poisoned by other people's bad day. And so we include in our prayer today our family members and our friends, our loved ones, our children, wherever they are. We know God is right there, surrounding them, filling them, lifting them up. We let our prayer be a blessing in the world, so that all those things that make us fearful, we say God is right there. Yes, God is right there as a principle of divine intelligence, as a principle of perfect peace. God is right there. We bless our church, we bless all churches, we bless synagogues and temples and mosques and ashrams, all paths to God. And I know we are blessed by being together, that everyone gets raised up, that everyone gets lifted, everyone gets to be healed. That in our teaching, we believe that everyone gets to be better than they've ever been before. And I accept this is the truth for each and every one of us today. And with a full heart, I give thanks, I release this word, and so it is. Together we all say, Amen.